6 years. That's how long I carried her dream on my back like a mule bred for loyalty and sacrifice. It wasn't always this heavy. At first, it felt like pride. Back when she'd hold my hand with ink-stained fingers after studying until midnight and whisper, "Thank you for believing in me, Marcus." I believed, all right. Believed so hard that I took double shifts, skipped vacations, said no to promotions that required me to relocate, and poured every bonus check into her tuition, her rent, her textbooks, and those endless essential fees that med school seemed to invent every other semester. When her student loan application got denied, I co-signed without hesitation. When her car broke down, I sold mine and took the bus. When she had breakdowns during finals, I stayed up with her, holding back the weight of her anxiety with a cracked joke and a warm meal. I wasn't just her husband. I was her cheerleader, her financier, her crisis intervention team, her human Xanax. I used to joke that I wasn't her partner, I was her sponsor. And we'd laugh, mostly because it was half true, and partly because it hurt to say out loud. But never, not once, did I say it with resentment. I loved her, and I believed in her. Until that morning. She was in the shower, humming some upbeat song, maybe something by SZA or Ari Lennox, whatever she played on her empowerment playlist. I was just passing by her desk to grab the charger when I noticed her laptop open, screen still bright. Her graduation speech draft sat front and center, the title bold and centered, "To New Beginnings." Curious, proud even, I read on. To new beginnings, it started, and to the courage it takes to let go of the past. My fingers froze on the mousepad. My heart didn't quite beat the same after that sentence. I read it again. And to the courage it takes to let go of the past. Let go of the past? I wasn't the past. I was still very much standing in our house, paying our bills, reheating her leftovers, folding her laundry. I was the one who had just bought her a dress for her graduation dinner and booked the restaurant she had pinned on Instagram. What the hell did she mean by that? I scrolled down, hoping to find context, some line that redeemed me, some sentence that acknowledged the years I'd poured into her becoming the woman she now saw in the mirror. But there was nothing. Just mentions of her professors, her classmates, her mentors, her mother, and of course, Kayla, her ever-loyal best friend, who once told me I seemed too comfortable being average. No mention of me. Not even a thank you to the man who paid for every goddamn part of her journey from pre-med to the morning she'd put on that cap and gown. Not a word about the man who built her life while setting his own on fire. I just sat down in her desk chair, staring at the screen, hands folded in my lap like a man trying to stay calm at the edge of an earthquake. The cursor blinked at me like a taunt. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she just hadn't finished. Maybe I'd see a draft tomorrow that included me, called me her rock or her constant. I almost laughed at how pathetic the hope sounded in my head. But that line, to let go of the past, kept echoing. It wasn't poetic. It was precise. It was a surgical strike buried in metaphors. And I was the target. When she walked out of the bathroom wrapped in steam, in that familiar terry cloth robe, she smiled at me and kissed my forehead. "You're up early." I nodded. "Yeah, just checking emails." "You didn't see the speech draft, did you?" I tilted my head. "I did." She paused, then said lightly, "Don't judge too hard. It's just a rough cut." Rough cut? That line was carved like marble. I didn't argue. I didn't even flinch. I just smiled and said, "Sounds like you're ready for what's next." She blinked for a second longer than usual, maybe wondering if I caught something. But she shrugged and walked off to start her makeup. That moment rewrote everything for me. I had been holding up a dream that no longer had a place for me in it. She had already rewritten her story, and I wasn't even a footnote. The 6 years I'd spent carrying her were already being packed away into the chapter labeled What I Outgrew. And the worst part? I wasn't even angry. I was numb. There's a silence that comes when your soul finally catches up with what your instincts have been whispering for months. I'd noticed the way she stopped laughing at my jokes, how she said, "my apartment," instead of "our place," how she introduced me less and less in public settings. I'd brushed it off as stress, but it wasn't stress. It was detachment dressed as ambition. And now, it was almost done. I closed her laptop gently. I didn't confront her. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even ask her to explain. Because in that moment, I realized something more important than any answer she could give. I had become invisible to the person I gave everything for. That morning, as she walked past me with her makeup perfect and her dreams already casting a shadow over mine. I made a quiet promise to myself. She thinks she's starting a new beginning. So will I. And mine won't come with a thank you note or a graduation cap. It'll come with something a little louder, a little colder, a little more permanent. She never left her phone unlocked. Not once in 6 years. It was something I joked about, the way she clutched it like it contained state secrets. If I so much as glanced at it while it buzzed on the table, she'd swoop in with a laugh that didn't quite touch her eyes. Privacy is healthy, she used to say. And I agreed. Until that morning. She left in a rush, coffee in one hand, keys in the other, purse half-zipped. She was late for some student panel on patient advocacy. I watched her go through the front window like I always did, sipping my own cup of stale, reheated caffeine. The door clicked shut. Then her phone buzzed on the couch. I glanced at it. Reflex, not suspicion. But the screen lit up with no lock. That never happened. Not even on accident. My first instinct was to call her, tell her she left it behind. But then the notification blinked again. Kayla. Of course. Girl, did you file yet? The clock is ticking. LOL. My stomach turned in a way I hadn't felt since my mother's funeral, something in between nausea and falling off a ledge. Another message came through before I could process the first. Photo's gonna look weird if you wait till after the ceremony. Don't want him all up in your graduation pics. Haha. I stared at the screen, as if disbelief could undo what I just read. Then came the dagger. He's still clueless, right? Gotta love how useful he's been, though. Let that ink dry, sis. Let that ink dry. It was like reading my own obituary in real time, sent via text and wrapped in emojis. I didn't scroll at first. I couldn't. I just sat there, phone in hand, heartbeat pounding against my ribs like a warning siren. The room went silent around me, except for the blood rushing to my ears. When I finally opened the thread, I saw months of messages, hidden in plain sight. Plans, laughs, complaints, strategy. Everything laid out in casual cruelty between two women who were supposed to love me, one as my wife, the other as a trusted friend. Marcus is like the perfect training wheel. Solid until you're ready to really ride. Med school was the goal, not the marriage. He's sweet, but he's not built for where I'm going. That one gutted me. Not because it was harsh, but because it was exactly how she'd started treating me in the last year. Like I was some relic of her old life. The man who paid for the classes, kept the fridge full, stayed up to quiz her with flashcards, but didn't belong in the polished version of her future. The Marcus she built with? That guy didn't make the cut. I didn't cry. Not right away. I just put the phone back where she left it, like some invisible crime scene I didn't want to disturb. I stood in the middle of our living room, surrounded by framed photos of us, ski trips, graduation dinners, our honeymoon in Tulum. And I realized none of it mattered anymore. All those smiles were temporary, staged for the camera, archived for the illusion. I was never her destination. I was the bridge she used to get there. But even in that storm of betrayal, I didn't break. Because what she didn't know, what no one knew, was that I had been building something too. While she studied her anatomy flashcards and vented about clinical rotations, I was up every night in the spare room coding like a man possessed. NovaSync wasn't just an idea, it was a living, breathing platform. A medical diagnostics AI that could detect anomalies faster than human specialists. I'd pitched it quietly, developed it under the radar, surrounded myself with a skeleton crew of remote engineers who signed strict NDAs. I told no one, not even her. She thought I was just tinkering with some side project, something to keep me busy while she built her empire. She used to call it cute when I stayed up late at my desk, blue light glasses on, scribbling flowcharts like a man lost in a dream. But that dream had teeth. And just last week, it bit. MedAxis, one of the fastest growing medtech corporations in the country, had acquired NovaSync in a quiet, under-the-table deal. $500 million. Closed. Locked. Executed. I'd insisted on a 1-week NDA before they made the announcement. My lawyer, Raymond, had found it strange. You don't want the buzz? The press? What's the point of going public if you're keeping quiet? I just shook my head and said, give me a week. I needed to be clean. He raised an eyebrow, but didn't push. Raymond had known me for a decade. He could tell when something personal was in the shadows. And this was personal. I wasn't just holding on to that information for drama. I was holding it like a sword, waiting for the right moment to pull it from its sheath. She thought she was timing everything perfectly. Wait until graduation. Smile for the cameras. File the paperwork. Walk away with the illusion of moral high ground. And, she assumed, half of whatever little I had left. But she didn't know that little had just become life-changing. She didn't know she was divorcing a half-billionaire. And because of the NDA, she wouldn't have any legal claim to it. The ink wouldn't be dry in time. I sat back down, staring at the wall like it held answers I hadn't yet found. My heart ached, not just from betrayal, but from the eerie calm settling over me. It was like grieving someone who was still alive, someone who kissed you goodbye that morning but buried you in her mind months ago. She had no idea what storm she had just walked into. But I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to rage. I was going to wait. And when the ink dried, just like she planned, I'd be there. Not as the broken husband she thought she left behind, but as the man she never saw coming. The strange thing about success is how quiet it can be when you want it to be. While she buried herself in hospital rotations and late-night study groups, I buried myself in code. Not just lines of code, but architecture, scalability, future-proofing. NovaSync wasn't built to be trendy. It was built to be vital. It started as an idea during one of her breakdowns. She'd come home from a clinical shift fuming about how long a patient waited for results. "It's archaic," she'd muttered. "We're doctors, not fortune tellers. We shouldn't be guessing off delays." She was venting, but my mind had already begun assembling pieces. I started researching AI applications and diagnostics that very night. 2 months later, I had a working prototype that could scan inputted vitals and symptom clusters to produce predictive analytics. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than the lag-riddled mess hospitals were using. I tested it under fake names, ran simulations, even pitched it quietly to a small hospital in Oregon who thought they were beta testing a university research tool. Their success rate jumped 9% in a quarter. That was enough. I scaled, hired freelance engineers from around the world, created a shell company to shield development, kept my name off every public-facing document. And then, the real interest came. MedAxis. They've been watching the space for months, buying up smaller platforms and folding them into their larger ecosystem. But NovaSync was different. Our engine was cleaner, our prediction rate faster, and our interface light years ahead. I didn't even have to chase them. One of their VPs reached out to me directly via a secure message through a dev forum. "Is Marcus Blaine open to acquisition talk?" I was. Cautiously. 3 meetings later, I was sitting in a penthouse conference room in Chicago with their executive team, including their sharp-as-glass CEO, Anna Raleigh. She looked at me over the top of her glasses and said, "Why so quiet? This is brilliant work. You're sitting on something huge. Why haven't you gone public?" I sipped my water. Timing. Raymond, seated beside me, gave me a sidelong glance but said nothing. Anna leaned forward, clearly amused. "And what exactly are you waiting for, Mr. Blaine?" I looked her in the eye and smiled. "Graduation season." She laughed. "That's cryptic." I didn't elaborate. The deal took 3 more weeks to finalize. Lawyers drafted contracts thick as bricks. Analysts ran valuation models. MedAxis threw in options, profit sharing, a full exit clause, and a 1-year advisory role. I negotiated a 1-week media blackout after the ink dried. No press. No leaks. No internal memos beyond need-to-know circles. Raymond didn't get it. "You're worth $500 million now, Marcus. What exactly are we hiding for?" I just shrugged. "Let's call it a graduation gift." He didn't laugh, but he did stop asking. He's known me long enough to recognize that when I start speaking in metaphors, there's blood on the floor somewhere. That week, I walked through our house like a man holding 2 lives in his hands, one crumbling, one rising. She came home tired and distracted, talking about her rotation hours, some professor who wanted to mentor her postgrad, and how she might specialize in cardiology. I listened, nodded, even offered to rub her shoulders like I used to. She smiled, grateful but absent. She had already left me in her mind. I could feel it every time her eyes didn't quite meet mine. But she didn't know I had just transferred the final payment into our shared account. 6 years of debt, all gone. The account she thought was modest now had an extra $380,000 in it. My parting gift. I wanted her to think she'd won. That the financial rug was still under her feet. I kept playing the role. Supportive husband. Reliable Marcus. The guy she could count on until she let go of the past. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. There's a stillness that comes when you know how the story ends and everyone else is still fumbling through Act 2. One night, I stayed up late, going over NovaSync's backend infrastructure. It was like checking on a child I'd raised while no one else was looking. Clean code, strong security, proprietary algorithms, it all hummed like a living, breathing thing. She'd never once asked about it, never peeked over my shoulder or inquired about my late nights at the desk. Maybe she didn't care. Or maybe she didn't believe I had anything worth caring about. She was wrong. The morning before her graduation, she was up early, curling her hair and rehearsing her speech in front of the mirror. I watched her through the crack in the door. She looked beautiful, confident, ready to conquer the world. And yet, I couldn't help but feel like I was staring at a stranger wearing my wife's skin. I left a gift box on the kitchen counter before she walked out the door, a silver bracelet with her initials, a small card inside that read, "You made it. Proud of you. M." She texted me a heart emoji an hour later. I didn't respond, because by then, I was already in Raymond's office, signing the final phase of the acquisition. There were cameras, a handshake photo with Anna Raleigh, and a glass of champagne I barely sipped. When it was done, Raymond handed me a manila envelope. "Everything's finalized. Wire confirmation is in. And your press release, set to drop in 2 days, per your request." I nodded. "Good." He tilted his head. "So, are we celebrating?" I stood there, staring out his window at the city skyline. Not yet. The celebration comes later. He didn't ask when. He didn't have to. He just raised his glass and said, "To the long game." I clinked his glass and whispered, "To the reveal." That night, I returned home before she did. I reheated leftovers, set the table, lit a candle like I used to when she pulled all-nighters. When she walked in with her gown draped over her arm and stress still in her eyes, I kissed her forehead. "You hungry?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Starving." I served her, asked about her day, let her complain about some speech edits and Kayla being late. She didn't know that I knew everything. She didn't notice the slight edge in my smile. She had no idea I had just signed the kind of deal people kill for. She thought I was her safety net. She didn't realize I was the storm. Graduation day came wrapped in sunshine and irony. She was radiant, absolutely glowing. And I'd be lying if I said it didn't stir something in me. There was still a flicker of the woman I'd fallen in love with underneath all that ambition and detachment, but it was buried under layers of performance, curated smiles, and polished speeches. Still, I played my part. Crisp navy suit, pressed shirt, matching tie, standing beside her like a prop. Just the husband. We parked near the auditorium, her parents riding behind us in their rental, all grins and fuss. Her mother was already crying. Her father, stoic as ever, held a bouquet of pink lilies too tightly, like he was afraid someone might steal the only thing he'd actually contributed to her journey. "You okay?" I asked her as we crossed the pavement. She looked at me briefly, blinking against the sun. "Of course. Why wouldn't I be?" I shrugged. "It's a big day." She nodded, then walked ahead, heels clacking against the concrete, gown slung over her arm like it weighed nothing. And maybe it didn't. Maybe all those years really had become weightless to her tuition payments, grocery runs, the late-night drives to the emergency room when she got sick, the time I sold my vintage guitar to cover one of her surprise lab fees. Forgotten, or rewritten into something else. Something disposable. Backstage was a flurry of activity. Graduates hugging, fixing each other's caps, lining up alphabetically while parents found their seats. I stood to the side, tucked near a wall, trying not to be in the way. A few of her classmates passed by, offering polite nods or casual glances, the kind you give someone you don't fully recognize but assume must belong. She spotted me from a few feet away and called out, "Marcus, hand me the folder?" I held it out. She took it without looking at me. Then, turning to the woman beside her, she said, "Oh, this is Marcus. Just my husband." Just, that word wasn't new, but hearing it that way, flat, tossed out like an explanation for a misplaced purse. Hit harder than I expected. Not my partner, not my biggest supporter, not even the man who made this possible. Just my husband. I felt like background noise at my own investment. I smiled anyway. "Nice to meet you," her classmate said. "You too," I replied. Then I stepped back, letting her own the space. That was what she wanted, right? To shine without my shadow anywhere near her spotlight. I watched her pose for pictures, adjust her sash, check her makeup in the reflection of her phone. Her eyes scanned the crowd for Kayla, and when she finally spotted her, she lit up. They hugged like sisters. Kayla winked at her. I didn't need to hear what they said. I'd already read enough. But watching it live, that wink, that sly little smirk, it turned something in my gut. I caught Kayla's eyes for a brief moment. Her smile faltered. Good. The ceremony began with the usual pomp and forced inspiration. The dean droned on about perseverance, dedication, the triumph of the human spirit. I clapped when everyone else clapped, cheered when names were called. When it was her turn to walk across the stage, I stood, not out of obligation, but out of closure. I watched her accept her diploma with a glowing smile, watched her grip the hand of the administrator like this was the beginning of her empire. And maybe it was. Just not the one she thought she controlled. The applause died down, the final speaker took the mic, and then it came her moment. She stepped up to the podium like it belonged to her. Confident, poised, beautiful in that high achiever way that demanded admiration. I already knew what was coming. I'd read the speech. Still, part of me hoped she'd changed it. That maybe something in her heart had softened since then. Nope. To new beginnings, she started, smiling out at the sea of caps and families, and to the courage it takes to let go of the past. There it was, word for word. No acknowledgement, not even a glance my way. She spoke of mentors, of late-night studying in libraries, of how her chosen family kept her sane. She thanked Kayla by name. She gave a nod to her professors, to her mother for always believing in her, and to everyone who saw my future even when I couldn't see it myself. Not a single syllable about me. I sat through the rest of the speech like a ghost in my own life. Numb, applauding because it was easier than walking out. I could feel the heat in my chest, disappointment simmering beneath stillness. But I didn't let it break the surface. I just kept smiling. Afterward, the photo frenzy began. Families poured onto the lawn, snapping selfies, throwing caps in the air. Her father insisted on a dozen variations. Just her, just the girls, one with her mom, one with the whole tribe. Finally, she turned to me. Marcus, can you take one of us? Not, can you be in one? Just take it. I nodded, took the phone, captured the moment. Thank you, she said absently, already checking the angles. Then, almost as an afterthought, she slid next to me and said, okay, one quick shot with my husband. The smile she gave for the camera was flawless, professional, detached, rehearsed. Click. That was the photo she would use, probably. Post it with some caption about support and teamwork, just enough to protect her image. But the moment the ink dried on those papers, I knew she'd crop me out of her narrative like I was a smudge on glass. Still, I said nothing. Later that evening, back at our apartment, I handed her the same flowers her father had nearly crushed earlier that morning. She looked at them, smiled politely, and kissed me on the cheek. I'm exhausted, she said. But this was a good day. Yeah, I replied, watching her disappear down the hallway. It was. In a way, it really was. Because while she celebrated her degree, her photos, her perfectly sculpted speech, what she didn't realize was this. The real graduation hadn't been hers. It had been mine. It happened exactly 1 week later, like clockwork. The house was quiet. A soft Tuesday morning sun filtered through the blinds, and the smell of coffee lingered in the kitchen. I'd made breakfast. Her favorite, even. Soft scrambled eggs, toast with honey, and papaya slices she swore helped her digestion. She was scrolling her phone as she ate, barely acknowledging me except for the occasional nod. I watched her over the rim of my mug. There was something surgical in her silence, like she was bracing to deliver a dose of pain she'd already measured. When she finally spoke, her tone was clinical, her words flat. Marcus, she said, not looking up. I've thought a lot about this. It's time we part ways. She didn't even use the word divorce. I put my mug down gently. Part ways. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thin manila envelope, sliding it across the table like a receipt. I'll make this easy. Just sign. No need for drama. I didn't touch it. I looked at her. Really looked at her. The same woman who used to fall asleep mid-sentence on the couch with anatomy flashcards in her lap. The same woman I used to pick up from clinicals at midnight, half-frozen and exhausted, clutching fast food bags and murmuring about chest x-rays. Now, she sat across from me calm, rehearsed, detached, as if I were a client she'd finished working with. I opened the envelope slowly, unfolded the papers. It was all there. Neatly typed, itemized, emotionless. She wanted half. Half of everything. The apartment, the car, the furniture, and of course, the business. She listed Novasync as marital property, estimating its value at a modest $80,000, clearly assuming it was just some quirky tech project, nothing of real consequence. Then came the bold part: spousal support, monthly payments, justification, career sacrifice during medical training. She claimed she deferred income potential for the sake of our household, that she deserved ongoing compensation for the years I'd supported her. I stared at the words. I wasn't angry. I was impressed. It was bold, efficient, cold. She didn't flinch as I read. She just sipped her coffee and said, "It's all standard. I've already retained counsel." I folded the papers, placed them back in the envelope, and tapped my fingers on it lightly. "You're sure this is what you want?" She looked at me like I was asking something silly. "It's for the best." I nodded. "All right, then give me a few days to respond formally." That surprised her. She expected resistance, a fight, maybe even begging. She'd built this version of me in her head, passive, dependent, too soft to let go. The same man who cheered her through med school, bought her groceries, and folded her scrubs. She didn't realize that while she was busy planning her escape, I'd already opened the door. She stood, picked up her plate, rinsed it, and turned off the faucet like she'd done it 1,000 times. Like this was just another normal Tuesday. She kissed me on the cheek. "Thanks for breakfast." Then she walked out the door with her white coat draped over her arm and her stethoscope hanging from her neck like a badge of victory. I stood in the kitchen, holding the envelope like it might dissolve if I gripped it too tightly. 3 months ago, she came home in tears because a patient died unexpectedly. I held her for an hour on the bathroom floor while she sobbed into my chest. She told me I was her safe place. Now I was an obstacle. I sat down at my desk and called Raymond. "It's go time." "You got served." "Yep." He chuckled bitterly. "She has no idea, does she?" "None." We set the wheels in motion. He'd already had everything prepared: financial declarations, ownership documentation, digital timestamps, contract history. We had airtight records of when Novasync began, the original LLC formation, the transfer of IP rights. And best of all, we had the acquisition documents, sealed, signed, and dated 3 days after the filing. She thought she'd be walking away with half a startup. She didn't know she'd just forfeited half a fortune. Raymond and I met in his office that afternoon. He flipped through her petition like it was a kindergarten art project. "Spousal support?" he said, raising an eyebrow. "Bold. She's entitled to nothing post-filing, right?" "Exactly. Especially since the acquisition wasn't finalized until after she served you. Everything beyond that date is legally yours, free and clear." I nodded slowly. "Let's keep it quiet. No retaliation. No show of force. I want her to believe this is going exactly how she planned." Raymond leaned back in his chair. "You sure about that? You don't want to file a counterclaim yet?" "Not yet," I said. "Let her feel comfortable. Let her think she's winning." He grinned. "You're playing the long game. Always." That night, she came home late. Said she had a rough shift. I listened, nodded, pretended to care. Not because I didn't, but because I knew it didn't matter anymore. Her emotions were no longer my responsibility. Her bad days, her triumphs, her fake apologies, those belonged to the next man naive enough to believe he could build a life with her. We went to bed in silence. She turned her back to me. I stared at the ceiling. 3 more days until the announcement. 3 more days until her perfect little plan unraveled. I closed my eyes and counted backward from 1,000. Not because I was anxious, but because I needed the quiet before the storm. She wanted a clean exit. I was going to give her one. Clean, legal, and absolute. And when it was over, when the truth came out, when the ink dried and the media explosion hit like a wave, she'd look back at that morning and realize just how badly she miscalculated the man sitting across from her. She thought I was soft. She thought I was static. She thought she was walking away with everything. But she was walking away from a $500 million empire. And she didn't even say thank you. It dropped at 9:01 a.m. on a Thursday. Right on schedule. No pre-hype, no teasers. Just a clean, direct press release from MedAxis posted on their official channels. Picked up within seconds by every major tech and healthcare news outlet in the country. MedAxis acquires Novasync in $500 million strategic expansion deal. There it was. My name in black and white, my photo next to Anna Raleigh, CEO of MedAxis, our hands clasped in a firm shake, both of us smiling like a pair of industry titans. I wore that smile like armor. Clean, professional, unbothered. But beneath it, it was war paint. By 9:06, my phone was vibrating nonstop. Emails, calls, texts, contacts I hadn't heard from in years suddenly wanted to reconnect. Investors who ignored my pitch decks back when I was bootstrapping wanted to grab coffee. Former classmates congratulated me like we'd been best friends all along. LinkedIn lit up like a Christmas tree. But one message made me pause. Her name on the screen. Her. What is this? Marcus. What the hell is this? No. Hi. No, congratulations. Just confusion. Panic. A flicker of dawning comprehension. I stared at the message for a full minute. I could imagine her sitting at the break room table, scrolling through her phone with a confused frown, reading the headline again and again like it might change if she blinked hard enough. I didn't reply. I had nothing to say, not anymore. My words had already been spoken through contracts, valuations, and that perfect headline that confirmed everything she didn't know. Instead of texting back, I opened my calendar and forwarded the contact inquiry from Forbes requesting a short quote for their feature article. I replied simply, "Let's talk legacy." At 10:15 a.m., Raymond called, chuckling so hard he nearly choked. "Brother," he said, "you've officially broken the internet." "Good," I said, sipping my tea. "She texted you yet?" "Of course. She'll call next. Then maybe cry. Then show up. She won't get past Damaris." He laughed again, longer this time. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." By noon, she called 4 times. Damaris, my assistant, had strict instructions: block, log, and forward to legal. Nothing more. But just after lunch, I heard her voice. Not in person. Not directly. Over the phone, in the hallway outside my office. The kind of whisper cry that turned sharp at the edges. Damaris had stepped out to lunch, and one of the interns had buzzed her in without realizing who she was. I stood behind the glass door, listening. "Kayla, I swear to God, I didn't know," she was saying. He never said a word. Not a single thing. And now it's everywhere. It's on every screen. $500 million. Kayla, he played me. Played you? No. I played the game you started. I just finished it better. Her voice broke. Why didn't I wait? Why didn't I just... God, I filed too early. And there it was. The moment it clicked. She didn't just file for a divorce. She filed herself out of a legacy. I turned the doorknob and stepped out. Her eyes snapped to mine. Red, puffy, mascara trailing ever so slightly. Still beautiful, still composed, but this time, the mask had cracks. "Marcus," she breathed. "Please, can we talk?" I tilted my head. "I think your paperwork said everything." She stepped forward. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. If you had." I interrupted. "If you'd known I was about to be rich, you'd have stayed?" She paused. Just a flicker. That was all the answer I needed. I gestured toward the elevator. "You need to leave." "Marcus, wait. I made a mistake." "No. You made a plan. You just didn't check the timeline." She blinked rapidly, her breath catching. "I was scared, okay? I thought we were done. I didn't think. You didn't think I was worth staying for," I said. "Let's not rewrite it now." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Silence filled the space between us like a verdict. She looked around, suddenly aware of the eyes on her, my team, the interns, Damaris just returning from lunch. People pretending not to look while absolutely looking. She pulled her jacket tighter. "Can we at least talk later?" she asked, voice lower now. I shook my head. "From now on, if you want to talk, you talk to Raymond." The elevator dinged behind her. "Don't do this," she said as the doors slid open. "I'm not doing anything." "You did." And with that, she stepped inside, the doors closing on a face I no longer recognized. That night, I sat at home alone. No music, no noise. Just me, a decanter of scotch, and the TV muted as news anchors discussed my acquisition. It should have felt like victory. Maybe, in some ways, it did. But mostly, it felt like silence. Not sadness. Not joy. Just the sound of a chapter ending. I picked up my phone and checked my emails. Dozens of speaking invitations, media requests, board offers. But I scrolled past them all until I reached the last message forwarded from Raymond's team. Her lawyer. Subject: revised petition. New language. Claims of hidden assets. Attempts to reclassify Novasync as marital intellectual property. I almost laughed. It was so desperate. So clumsy. She'd finally realized what she walked away from, and now she was trying to climb back in through a legal window already sealed shut. Raymond had already filed the rebuttal. He'd included the original timeline of the acquisition, the NDA proof, and, most damning of all, her own text messages to Kayla, which I had quietly collected and archived. The messages where she joked about using me, where she timed the filing like a business transaction, where she called me useful. Those weren't going to vanish. My legal team wasn't just going to fight back. They were going to bury the strategy she thought was clever under the weight of her own words. I poured another drink and looked around the apartment, the place we picked out together, the kitchen I stocked, the couch she cried on during step 2 boards, the bookshelf with the framed photo of our wedding day tucked between dusty medical volumes, and an old cookbook I used more than she ever did. It was all mine now, not because of the court, but because she'd forfeited it. And the woman who once dreamed of white coats and luxury would now face something she'd never planned for. Irrelevance. The first sign of panic came 3 days after the press release. The apartment smelled different. Not like the clinical peppermint oil she usually diffused or the soy candles that made the place feel like a Pinterest board. No, this was nostalgia. Butterscotch cookies and lavender. She was baking. Voluntarily. I stepped into the kitchen and found her standing there in an apron she hadn't worn in years, the one with a cartoon heart and the words DR in training scrawled across it in faded red. Her hair was tied back, face soft, almost hopeful. "Hey," she said. "I made cookies. Your favorite." I stared at her, not angrily, not with suspicion, just with the calm detachment of a man watching a rerun of a show he'd already outgrown. "Thanks," I said. I took one, bit it, nodded politely, then walked out without another word. That was the beginning of the performance. Suddenly, she was everywhere, offering back rubs, leaving little post-it notes on the bathroom mirror. "You've got this," and "proud of you." She started cooking again. Dinner at 6:30, candles lit. She played our old jazz playlist at night like we were a couple reconnecting after a tiff. But her eyes gave her away. They watched me too closely, tracked every movement like a hawk trying to time its descent. She laughed too easily, touched my arm too often. The performance was clumsy, because this wasn't love. This was fear. She was trying to crawl back into the life she threw away. The visits to my office started soon after. The first time, she showed up with lunch. I didn't even let her past reception. Damaris intercepted her with a raised brow and a clipboard. "She says she's just dropping off food." "Noted," I said. Politely declined. Of course, Damaris replied without missing a beat. She didn't come back empty-handed again, but she kept coming. 3 times the next week. Flowers. Lattes. A handwritten card about healing and forgiveness. All denied entry. All logged. Damaris kept a spreadsheet. Names, dates, items, messages. She was methodical, almost enthusiastic. "She really thinks she's going to wiggle back in," she said one morning, sipping her espresso. "She thinks guilt and charm are assets," I replied. "And she's late to both." I nodded. "Log everything. If she gets aggressive, notify legal." It didn't take long for her lawyer to send a revised petition. The language changed. Now, they accused me of hiding financial gains, intentionally misleading her during the divorce process. They called the MedAxis deal a concealed asset, as if I'd crafted a whole corporate merger just to spite her. Raymond responded with elegance and steel. We submitted her original petition, complete with timestamps that preceded the final acquisition. We added screenshots of the text she sent Kayla about using me, about filing early, about walking away clean. And just for insurance, we included the message logs from Damaris's visitor spreadsheet, highlighting the sudden shift in her behavior after the deal went public. She wasn't just clawing at what she lost. She was exposing her own intent. The last time she tried to show up at my office, building security stopped her. She wasn't on the list. Her name flagged the visitor system now, an alert to my assistant and legal counsel. Damaris texted me a photo, her standing in the lobby, arms folded, frustration written all over her face. "Damaris, she says she just wants to talk. Heart to heart." Me. Heart to heart? We signed the death certificate already. Damaris sent a thumbs up and walked her out personally. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Her lawyer sent another letter. This one was a plea disguised as a warning. Reconsider the terms. Negotiate. Avoid court. Raymond laughed out loud when he read it. She's spiraling. She should. Think she knows what's coming next? She will, I said. When the counter hits. That night, I sat in my home office, surrounded by silence. My phone buzzed again, this time, a voicemail. I played it on speaker. Her voice cracked. Marcus, I know I messed up. I thought I was doing the right thing for me. I thought I was being brave. But maybe I was just being stupid. Can we talk? Please? I'll sign whatever you want. I just want to fix this. It was the most honest thing she'd said in months. And it was far too late. I forwarded the message to Raymond. The next day, he filed the counter. Not out of spite. Out of principle. Because this wasn't just betrayal. This was manipulation followed by attempted cleanup once the target turned out to be more than she bargained for. Raymond's filing was meticulous. 1 count of misrepresentation, 1 of attempted marital fraud, and a clause invoking a breach of verbal agreement. I had the emails, the notes, the voicemails, all documenting her promises to repay me for med school, her acknowledgement that I funded her entire education. It was ironclad. Then came the next blow. An anonymous complaint was filed to the state medical board. A formal ethics review was opened. Someone had submitted a bundle of her text messages. Screen captures. Metadata included. The committee wasn't stupid. They saw exactly what it was. An aspiring physician joking about using someone for financial gain, timing a divorce to avoid sharing future earnings, weaponizing a relationship for personal profit. It didn't matter that it wasn't a felony. It was enough to question her integrity. Enough to trigger a review. When the news reached her, I wasn't there. But Damaris overheard her sobbing in the lobby bathroom. Security was called. She left in tears, clutching her phone, her face pale and pinched. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about letting the truth run its course. She'd walked out on me thinking I was nothing but a temporary stepping stone. But the moment she filed those papers, she kicked off an avalanche. And now, as she scrambled to rebuild the wall she tore down with her own hands, all I had to do was watch. She panicked. I planned. And there was no crawling out from that. It was oddly quiet the morning the countersuit was filed. No thunderstorms. No dramatic music in the background. Just the hum of my espresso machine and the low whir of the dishwasher. I sat at the kitchen island, dressed in a dark Henley and jeans, reading through the finalized document on my tablet. Every word was sharp, calculated, precise. Raymond had outdone himself. Count 1, intentional misrepresentation. Count 2, attempted marital fraud. Count 3, breach of verbal contract. That last one, that was personal. It was the email she never thought I kept, sent from her student account in year 2 of med school. The subject line was casual. My promise, don't let me forget. She had written it after one of her particularly emotional study breakdowns, saying she didn't want to ever forget how much I'd invested in her dream. She'd promised to pay me back for every dime once she became a doctor. She probably assumed I deleted it years ago, but I kept it. Just like I'd kept every transfer receipt, every loan statement, every credit card payment tied to her education. Not because I thought I'd need them, but because when you give someone everything, you want to remember the cost. Raymond had also attached an itemized spreadsheet of what I'd paid over the years. Tuition, $312,000 rent, utilities, textbooks, $48,000 travel, groceries, miscellaneous, $20,000 total, $380,000. Her lawyer responded within hours, asking if we were open to mediation. That's when I knew the countersuit hit harder than expected. They thought we'd cave for a quiet settlement. They didn't realize I wasn't trying to settle. I was trying to set a record. That afternoon, she called. I answered. Marcus, she said softly. We don't have to go through court. I'll sign whatever. Let's just be adults about this. Adults, I said. Like when you joked about using me until the ink dried? She inhaled sharply. You read those texts out of context. I read them with dates and timestamps. That's all the context I needed. Silence on the other end. Then she said, please, I'll withdraw peacefully. I'll give up everything. Just don't ruin my name. That's what it came down to. Not remorse. Not love. Reputation. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the skyline outside my window. You ruined your name, not me. I just held up the mirror. She hung up. No apology. Just silence. Later that evening, Raymond called to let me know she was trying to get the case dismissed. She says she wants to move on amicably, he told me. She means quietly. Exactly. Tell her no, I said. We're moving forward. Raymond paused. You sure? I'm not doing this for revenge, Ray. I'm doing this for every person who ever got used and discarded like a stepping stone. I'm doing this so she knows that burning bridges doesn't always mean you get to walk away. He sighed, then said, All right, we'll proceed. But the fallout didn't stop there. By the end of the week, the medical licensing board had confirmed that her ethics hearing would move forward. The evidence had been reviewed. Her character was now a matter of public interest. She went dark on social media, deleted photos, turned off comments. Kayla tried to play damage control, posting vague quotes about people trying to dim your light. It backfired. Screenshots of their text exchanges leaked anonymously. Someone posted them on a pre-med forum. The title read, This is what entitlement looks like. They were reshared, debated, analyzed. Suddenly, she wasn't an inspiring grad with a glowing future. She was a case study in ambition gone toxic. I didn't need to say a word. The world was doing it for me. One night, Damaris texted me a screenshot of a Reddit thread where someone had dissected the situation in bullet points. At the end, they wrote, Moral of the story, don't marry someone just to upgrade your status. Especially not someone who reads the fine print better than you. I didn't laugh. I just saved the thread. I didn't want vengeance. I wanted documentation. A record of how someone can try to destroy you and fail. She made one last attempt before the court date. Showed up at the apartment wearing the same outfit she wore the day I proposed to her. I opened the door but didn't let her inside. Don't you remember us? She said, voice trembling. How it used to be. I remember everything, I said. That's the difference. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't want to be your enemy, Marcus. You made that decision when you turned me into your exit strategy. She stood there for a long moment before whispering, I thought you were just a placeholder. I nodded once. You were wrong. Then I closed the door. I sat down on the couch, let the silence soak in, and stared at the divorce paperwork again. The original, the revised, the countersuit. All of it laid out like chapters in a book I didn't ask to write. She tried to play the game, but I designed the rules. Courtrooms aren't built for closure. They're built for containment, of emotions, of noise, of mess. They smell like old paper and recycled air. The chairs are never quite comfortable. The clocks tick louder than they should. And when the person who once held your heart walks in wearing a blazer they probably picked for sympathy, it doesn't sting the way you thought it might. It just clarifies everything. She walked in 2 minutes late, flanked by her lawyer, hairstyled in soft curls like it might soften her case. Her expression was pulled tight, a blend of nerves and entitlement. I watched her scan the room, hesitate when she saw me, then look away like I was the one who broke us. She still hadn't realized the difference between leaving and losing. Her lawyer, Richard Kane, was polished. Expensive suit, confident gait, the kind of man who specialized in flipping narratives. He stood when the judge entered, his hands folded neatly, his tone syrup smooth. Your Honor, he began, this case is about transparency. My client, Dr. Alana Rhodes, entered her marriage with trust. She supported her husband through his business journey, unaware of the substantial financial developments he withheld from her. We argue this was intentional, strategic, an attempt to deprive her of fair marital assets. I didn't flinch, didn't blink. I simply looked at the judge, then at Raymond, who stood calmly beside me, the picture of composed precision. Raymond stepped forward. Your Honor, my client, Mr. Marcus Blaine, was served divorce papers on April 3rd. The MedAxis acquisition was finalized on April 6th. The MDA and internal documents proving the timeline are included in Exhibit A. Moreover, text messages between Dr. Rhodes and her friend. Exhibit B shows she planned to file early in order to keep photos clean and let the ink dry before anything public surfaced. The judge, an older man with tired eyes and a reputation for zero tolerance for drama, adjusted his glasses and flipped through the exhibits. He didn't rush. Every second felt like a hammer pounding against the shell of the story she had tried to build. Richard tried to recover. These texts are informal, out of context. Your Honor, Raymond interrupted. They are time-stamped, dated, and corroborated by the sequence of events. The judge looked at Alana. Did you file for divorce under the belief that Mr. Blaine's company was of modest value? She swallowed. At the time, yes. Were you aware of the potential deal with MedAxis? She hesitated. No, Raymond cleared his throat. Your Honor, with permission, we'd like to call Ms. Anna Raleigh to testify. The doors opened. and Anna entered like a force of nature. Elegant, sharp, no nonsense. CEO of MedAxis and arguably one of the most respected figures in the industry. She took the stand. Ms. Raleigh, Raymond began. When did discussions with Mr. Blaine regarding Novasync begin? February 9th, she said, without a blink. Our legal team reached out based on an internal referral. And when was the deal finalized? April 6th. Was there any indication during the early discussions that Mr. Blaine was going through divorce proceedings? No, she replied. The matter came up only after the filing was public. But our NDA predated that. Did he ever misrepresent the value or status of the company to you? Not once. In fact, he was unusually reserved. Cautious, even. Raymond nodded and turned to the judge. Your Honor, the testimony confirms the acquisition did not exist as a legal asset during the time of divorce filing. The plaintiff's claim to half the acquisition is therefore invalid. The judge nodded slowly, jotting notes. Then came the final blow. Raymond brought out the email. Subject: My promise, don't let me forget. He read it aloud in full. Her words, her acknowledgement, her promise to pay back every cent of the $380,000 I had invested in her education. Richard objected. It's emotional, not contractual. Raymond held up a copy of her signature on a follow-up message. It was followed by a written payment plan proposal. Dated. Acknowledged. Never retracted. The courtroom was silent. The judge looked up, leaned forward, and said the words I'd waited 6 months to hear. Spousal support is denied. Claim to Novasync's valuation is denied. Reimbursement of $380,000 in educational support is granted to Mr. Blaine. Her face cracked then. It wasn't just shock. It was the realization that she hadn't just lost her case. She'd lost the story. Murmurs spread through the courtroom. A few reporters in the back began scribbling rapidly. This was going to leak. Even if the docket was sealed temporarily, someone would talk. Richard leaned in toward her, whispering something urgent. She shook her head. Her shoulders slumped. And for the first time, she looked small. Not because she was weak, but because the image she built had finally shattered under the weight of her choices. The judge banged his gavel. Court is adjourned. I stood, buttoned my blazer, and didn't look back. As I walked past her, she glanced up, eyes red but dry. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something. I didn't stop, didn't speak, didn't gloat. Because victory doesn't need a monologue. Outside the courthouse, the air felt different. Lighter. Raymond slapped my back. Hell of a win. It was never about winning, I said. It was about the truth. Well, the truth just bought you justice and $380,000. I exhaled, slow and deep. She'll never be the same, Raymond said. She already wasn't, I replied. We walked to the car in silence. And when I shut the door behind me, I didn't feel relief. I felt finality. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the burial of a version of me that once believed love meant unconditional sacrifice. Now I knew better. Love, real love, doesn't demand your silence in exchange for someone else's rise. And when someone treats you like a chapter, you don't wait for the next page. You close the book. 1 month passed. Quietly, without drama, without fireworks. No new texts. No calls. No surprise appearances at my office. She disappeared from my life the same way she tried to erase me from hers, surgical, deliberate, clean. Except this time, the silence wasn't mine to carry. It was hers. Then one morning, an envelope arrived. No postage. Hand-delivered. Cream-colored. With my name written in careful cursive I hadn't seen since our first anniversary. I stared at it for a while, not out of hesitation, but out of recognition. Some things, some people, wrap their guilt in elegance. I opened it. Inside was a check. Partial payment, $75,000. And a single note, written on the same kind of stationery she used for med school thank you cards. I never thought you'd be the one to win. I was wrong. No apology. No explanation. Just 7 words soaked in defeat. I folded the note back into the envelope and walked it to the sink. Watched the flame from a match curl the edges black. Watched the paper curl in on itself like it was trying to disappear. That was the last gift I accepted from her. The rest of my day went on like any other. At the office, the new product team was finalizing the prototype for Novasync Horizon. A portable diagnostic unit that could be deployed in rural clinics with 0 signal latency. I'd hired 10 engineers in the last 3 weeks. The dev floor buzzed with energy. Whiteboards covered in sketches, code snippets, timelines. People solving problems because they believed in the mission, not because they were trying to prove something to someone else. In the corner of my office sat a shelf with one photo frame. Not of her, of me. Sitting at a cracked dining table, coding at midnight under a flickering bulb. I'd taken it during the early days of NovaSync, back when it was just me, caffeine, and an idea I couldn't shake. I kept that photo to remind myself. I didn't build this out of revenge. I built it because I refused to be small. That afternoon, I spoke on a panel for strategic scaling at an innovation conference downtown. I wore a charcoal blazer, no tie, open collar, confident but grounded. As I walked backstage, someone from the event staff handed me a card. "She left this at the front," the girl said hesitantly. "Said you'd understand." I took it, half curious, half exhausted. Opened it. I saw the panel invite. I wanted to be there. I just couldn't. "I'm sorry." I tore it in half, dropped it in the trash. "You don't get to spectate the success you try to sabotage." The panel went well. I talked about scalability, investor pressure, founder fatigue, the importance of building not just for market fit, but for soul fit. The audience leaned in, took notes, asked good questions. Afterward, a young founder approached me. "How did you know it would work?" she asked. I smiled. "I didn't. I just knew I couldn't let someone else's limited vision trap me." She nodded slowly, inspired. I walked away knowing I'd become the man I used to dream about being when I was sleeping on potential. At home that night, I stood in the kitchen alone, stirring a pot of red lentil stew I'd perfected during her third-year rotations. Back then, I made it for her. Tonight, I made it for me. The difference tasted like peace. I took my bowl out to the balcony, looked out over the skyline, and let the city hum around me. There was no applause, no echo of footsteps down the hall. Just my breath, steady and strong. My phone buzzed. "Raymond, check your inbox," he said. "Your TEDx pitch got accepted." I smiled. "What's the theme?" "Reclaiming power. You were born for this." I nodded, then ended the call. Later, I opened a folder on my laptop titled Future. Inside were drafts, ideas, sketched outlines for a mentorship fund, something I'd been thinking about launching. A way to support people who, like me, had built everything while being overlooked. Maybe I'd call it the Invisible Builder Fund. It wasn't about charity. It was about recognition, about making sure no one had to prove their worth in silence ever again. A week after the check arrived, I received a LinkedIn request from her. No message, no note. I declined it without hesitation. She had graduated, but I had evolved. She delivered a speech about letting go of the past, but I turned that past into capital, into ownership, into something that couldn't be cropped out of a photo or buried in a revised petition. She played the short game. I built a legacy. Somewhere out there, she was probably trying to rebuild her image, praying the medical board cleared her ethics review. Maybe she'd get lucky. Maybe she wouldn't. But either way, her future would carry the stain of a plan gone wrong, and the name of the man who refused to be erased. As for me, I didn't need closure. I didn't need vindication. I'd already received the only graduation gift I ever truly wanted, freedom. And the view from this side of peace? It was worth every bill I ever paid. I stood there in the kitchen, staring at the pot of coffee I just brewed, when my phone buzzed on the counter. It was Marissa, my wife, or at least she still was, legally speaking. The text popped up, and I swear it felt like someone dumped a bucket of ice water over my head. "Hey, just a heads up. Mom's hosting a small thing for Eli's birthday Saturday. We kept it tight, just family. Hope you understand." I read it once, then twice, because my brain couldn't catch up with what my eyes were seeing. Just family? Eli's my son. My little boy, the one I'd rocked to sleep 100 times, the one whose diapers I'd changed in the middle of the night while Marissa snored away. His first birthday, and I'm not invited? My chest tightened, like someone had grabbed my heart and squeezed it hard. I blinked at the screen, trying to make sense of it, but all I could feel was the sharp sting, this betrayal cutting deeper with every second I stood there. I couldn't just let it sit there, festering like that. My hands were shaking, but I hit the call button anyway. Marissa picked up after 2 rings, her voice all light and airy, like she was talking about the weather. "It's just a birthday, Cal. Don't make it a thing." "Don't make it a thing?" My jaw clenched so tight I thought my teeth might crack. This wasn't some random barbecue or a girl's night out. It was Eli's first birthday, a milestone I'd been picturing for months. I'd stayed up late imagining the cake, the goofy grin he'd have when we sang to him, the way I'd scoop him up and tell him he was the best thing I'd ever made. And now she was acting like it was nothing, like I was overreacting for wanting to be there. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it came out rough, raw. He's my son too, Marissa. How is this not a thing? She sighed, that little huff she does when she's annoyed, and said, look, it's Mom's thing. She wanted it small. You'll see him another day. Another day. Like I was some weekend visitor, not his dad. I hung up, my pulse hammering in my ears, and before I could stop myself, I dialed Doreen, Marissa's mom. She answered with that fake sweet tone she uses when she's about to shut you down. Callum, hi. What's this about? I didn't waste time. Why am I not invited to Eli's birthday? She didn't even pause, just launched right in. It's more of a maternal side event, nothing personal. We're keeping it simple. Nothing personal? I almost laughed, but it caught in my throat like a jagged rock. Eli's my kid, and they're boxing me out like I'm some distant cousin who sends a card once a year. I wanted to yell, to tell her how wrong this was, but she kept going, her voice sharp now. You're making this harder than it needs to be, Callum. It's one day. One day. My son's first birthday. I hung up on her too, my hand shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. I walked into the living room, still reeling, and there it was, a half-finished Lego tower Eli had been playing with the last time he was here. Those little blue and red bricks, scattered across the coffee table, hit me like a punch to the gut. I could still see his chubby hands stacking them, hear his giggle when they'd fall over. That was my boy, my life, and they were cutting me out of it. Something snapped inside me, this hot, angry thing that I couldn't push down anymore. Fine. If they didn't want me there, if I wasn't family enough for them, then I wouldn't be around at all. I grabbed my phone again, my thumb hovering over the screen, and I started looking for a way out. Not just out of the house, but out of this whole mess they'd made. They could have their maternal side of it. Without me, I'd be gone, and they'd see what it felt like to miss someone who mattered. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew I wasn't sticking around to beg for a seat at a table they didn't even set for me. My heart was still racing, but now it wasn't just hurt, it was purpose. I'd show them I didn't need their permission to live my life, to feel like I mattered. Eli might not remember this birthday, but I damn sure remember how they made me feel, and I wasn't going to let it happen again. I sat down on the couch, right next to that Lego tower, and started scrolling, looking for somewhere, anywhere, that wasn't here. They'd pushed me out, and I was done pushing back. It was time to walk away. The kitchen felt smaller now, like the walls were closing in, but I didn't care. I poured myself a coffee, the steam rising up as I leaned against the counter, my mind spinning. I wasn't just mad. I was done. Done with Marissa's breezy excuses, done with Doreen's smug little rules, done with feeling like I had to prove I belonged in my own son's life. I took a sip, the heat burning my tongue, and it felt good, like it was waking me up. I wasn't going to call again, wasn't going to argue. They'd made their choice, and now I was making mine. I'd find a place to go, somewhere far from their balloons and their cake and their just family nonsense. I didn't need their invitation. I'd make my own plans, my own peace. And maybe, just maybe, they'd realize what they'd lost when I wasn't there to pick up the pieces anymore. I set the mug down, harder than I meant to, and it clinked against the counter. My eyes drifted back to the phone, to that stupid text still glowing on the screen. Hope you understand. No, I didn't understand, and I wasn't going to pretend I did. I opened a browser, my fingers moving fast now, searching for flights, hotels, anything that'd take me away from this. I didn't know what I'd find, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't spending Saturday sitting here, staring at these walls, while they celebrated without me. They wanted a tight little party? They could have it. I'd be somewhere else, somewhere they couldn't reach me, and I'd make damn sure it was better than anything they could have planned. That Lego tower caught my eye again, and I felt a pang, but I shoved it down. This wasn't about Eli, this was about them, and I wasn't playing their game anymore. I couldn't sleep that night, not after the way everything had gone down in the kitchen earlier. The house was quiet, too quiet, and it gave my thoughts too much room to bounce around. I ended up on the couch, a beer in one hand and my phone in the other, scrolling through an old photo album I'd kept on there. Pictures of Eli popped up, tiny, wrinkled, fresh from the hospital, his little fist curled up while Marissa slept in the background. I'd taken those shots, bleary-eyed and grinning like an idiot, because I couldn't believe he was mine. There were others too, me reading him bedtime stories, his head tucked under my chin, or the two of us at the park, him laughing as I pushed him on the baby swings. Those moments were everything to me, the glue that kept me going through the late nights and the fights with Marissa. And now, his first birthday was coming, this big, bright milestone, and they were telling me I wasn't essential. Like I was some extra piece they could leave out of the puzzle. The beer tasted bitter, or maybe that was just me. I set it down and rubbed my face, trying to shake the weight pressing on my chest. I kept seeing the text from Marissa, those cold little words, just family, and Doreen's voice, smooth and sharp, calling it a maternal side of it. It wasn't just that they didn't invite me, it was that they didn't even think I'd care. Like all those nights I'd spent pacing the floor with Eli, all those mornings I'd made his bottles, didn't count for anything. I wasn't going to sit here and take it, though. I wasn't going to let them erase me from his life one small thing at a time. My hand was trembling, but I grabbed my phone again, this time with a purpose. I wasn't calling anyone, I was done talking. I opened a travel app instead, the screen lighting up my face in the dark living room. At first, I scrolled through beach resorts, picturing sand and sun and a drink with one of those little umbrellas. But that didn't feel right, too loud, too crowded. I needed something else, something that'd strip away all this noise in my head. Then I saw it, Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Snow, mountains, cabins tucked away where no one could find me. It hit me like a lightning bolt. This was it. I could see myself there, standing in the cold, breathing air that didn't smell like resentment. I tapped through the options fast, my heart pounding now, but not from anger anymore. A private cabin, a ski pass, a first-class flight out of here. It was all right there, waiting. I didn't care about the cost. I just wanted out. I booked it all in one go, my fingers slamming the confirm button like it was a lifeline. The next morning, I woke up with a crick in my neck from the couch, but I didn't care. The sun was barely up, and I felt different, like I'd taken a step I couldn't take back. I grabbed my phone and called Jude, my boss, before I could second-guess myself. He picked up quick, his voice gravelly like he'd just rolled out of bed too. "Cal, what's up? You okay?" I didn't sugarcoat it. "I need some time off, Jude. Starting tomorrow. I'm heading out of town." There was a pause, and I braced myself for questions, but he just chuckled, low and easy. "You deserve some space, man. Take it. We'll manage without you for a bit." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Thanks, Jude. I owe you." He laughed again. "Nah, you don't. Just don't freeze your ass off wherever you're going." I hung up, and for the first time in days, I felt lighter. The house didn't feel so small anymore. It felt like a launch pad. I got up, stretched, and walked to the kitchen to make coffee, my mind already racing with what I'd need to pack. Wyoming wasn't just a getaway, it was a statement. They could have their party, their balloons, their cake. I didn't need it. I'd be somewhere else, somewhere they couldn't touch me, and I'd make it better than anything they could throw together. I poured the coffee, the smell filling the room, and leaned against the counter, staring out the window. The backyard was still, just grass and a couple of trees, but in my head, I was already seeing snow-covered hills and pine trees stretching up to the sky. I took a sip, letting the heat sink in, and started planning. I'd need my heavy coat, some boots, maybe a hat, stuff I hadn't touched since last winter. I'd pack light, though. I didn't want anything weighing me down. This wasn't about running away, it was about taking control. They thought I'd just sit here, waiting for scraps of time with Eli, but they were wrong. I wasn't going to beg for a place in his life. I built something for myself instead. The coffee mug warmed my hands, and I felt a small, hard smile tug at my mouth. Jackson Hole wasn't just a trip. It was my way of saying I wasn't disposable. They could keep their tight, little party. I'd be gone, and they'd feel it. I set the mug down and headed to the bedroom, pulling my duffel bag out from under the bed. It was old, a little beat up, but it'd do. I tossed it on the mattress and started grabbing clothes, sweaters, socks, a pair of gloves I'd forgotten I owned. Every item I threw in felt like a brick in a wall I was building between me and them. I didn't know what I'd find out there in the snow, but I knew it'd be better than sitting here, staring at that half-finished Lego tower and feeling like I didn't matter. I zipped the bag shut, the sound loud in the quiet room, and stood there for a second, breathing hard. This was it. I was really doing it. And for once, I wasn't looking back. I stood in the bedroom, my duffel bag zipped up and sitting on the bed like a quiet promise. Packing it had been slow, deliberate. Every sweater I folded, every pair of socks I tucked in, felt like I was putting on armor. Not the kind that protects you from a fight, but the kind that keeps you standing when someone's already knocked you down. The house was still, just the hum of the fridge in the kitchen breaking the silence, and I liked it that way. It gave me space to think, to let the decision I'd made last night settle into my bones. I was leaving. Jackson Hole was waiting, and I wasn't going to let anything pull me back. Not guilt, not second thoughts, nothing. I grabbed the bag, slung it over my shoulder, and headed downstairs, my boots thumping on the steps. It felt good, that weight on my back. It was mine, something I'd chosen. My phone buzzed as I hit the bottom stair, and I almost ignored it. But I glanced at the screen, and there it was, a flood of messages lighting up like warning lights on a dashboard. Marissa's name popped up first. "You sure you don't want to come?" "It's no big deal." I stared at it, my jaw tightening. No big deal? She was still acting like this was some casual thing, like I was overreacting for wanting to be at my own son's birthday. I scrolled down, and there was Doreen. "Don't make this about you." That one hit like a slap, and I could hear her voice in my head, all prim and cutting. Then Kylie, Marissa's sister, chimed in. "Hope you're not serious. Eli won't remember." I let out a sharp breath, almost a laugh, but there was no humor in it. They didn't get it. Not one of them. This wasn't about Eli remembering. This was about me, about what it meant to be his dad, and they were stripping that away like it was nothing. I dropped the bag by the front door and sank onto the couch, my phone still in my hand. Part of me wanted to fire back, to type out everything boiling inside me. How they gutted me with this. How they didn't have the right to decide where I belonged. But what was the point? They'd just twist it, make me the bad guy for feeling anything at all. Instead, I opened the camera roll, found the picture of my plane ticket I'd screenshotted last night. First class to Jackson Hole, departure tomorrow, and stared at it. That was my answer, right there. Not words, not arguments, but action. I switched to my social media app, the one I barely used anymore, and posted the ticket with a caption. "If I'm not invited, I'm unavailable." I hit send before I could overthink it, and the little notification sound felt like a door slamming shut. Good. Let them see it. Let them know I wasn't sitting here waiting for their permission. The phone buzzed again almost instantly. Likes, comments, a couple of shocked emojis from old friends I hadn't talked to in months. I didn't read them. I didn't need their opinions either. I tossed the phone onto the cushion next to me and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The half-finished Lego tower was still there on the coffee table, and it caught my eye again. I could almost hear Eli's laugh, that high-pitched squeal he'd let out when I'd knock it over on purpose just to see him smile. My chest ached, but I pushed it down. This wasn't about abandoning him. It was about refusing to let them treat me like I didn't matter. I'd see him soon, on my terms, not theirs. For now, I had to get out, had to breathe air that didn't taste like their rules. I got up, grabbed my coat from the closet, and checked the time. I still had a few things to do, pick up some thermal socks, maybe a new pair of gloves, stuff I'd need for the snow. The airport shuttle was booked for tomorrow morning, and I wanted to be ready. I stepped outside, locking the door behind me, and the cold air hit my face, sharp and clean. It wasn't Wyoming cold, not yet, but it was a taste of what was coming. I walked to my truck, the duffel still slung over my shoulder, and tossed it in the back. Driving into town, I kept the radio off, letting my thoughts run. I pictured Marissa reading that post, her lips pressing into that thin line she does when she's mad. I pictured Doreen scoffing, telling whoever would listen that I was being dramatic. Good. Let them talk. I wasn't there to hear it. At the store, I moved quick. Socks, gloves, a scarf I didn't really need but grabbed anyway. The cashier, a kid with a bored look, barely glanced at me as he rang it up. "Big trip?" he mumbled, nodding at the pile. "Yeah," I said, keeping it short. "Heading somewhere cold." He shrugged, like it didn't matter, and it didn't, not to him. But to me, it was everything. I paid, grabbed the bag, and headed back to the truck. The sky was gray now, clouds rolling in, and it matched how I felt, stormy, but steady. I drove home, the streets quiet, and pulled into the driveway just as my phone buzzed again. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. Whatever they had to say, it could wait. I was done answering. Back inside, I dropped the shopping bag by the duffel and went to the kitchen. I made a sandwich, ham, cheese, nothing fancy, and ate it standing up, leaning against the counter. The house felt different now, like it was just a pit stop, not a home. I washed the plate, set it to dry, and glanced at the clock. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. I grabbed my phone one last time, Saw the notifications piling up, more messages, more reactions, but I powered it off. Silence. That's what I wanted, what I was chasing. I headed upstairs, lay on the bed without bothering to change, and closed my eyes. The duffel was packed, the ticket was posted, and I was gone. Maybe not yet, but in every way that mattered. They'd see it soon enough. I stepped off the plane in Jackson Hole, and the cold hit me like a wall, sharp, crisp, and so different from the stale air I'd left behind. It rushed into my lungs, stinging a little, and I stood there on the tarmac for a second, just breathing it in. The mountains loomed in the distance, jagged and white, like something out of a painting I couldn't have dreamed up. I'd made it. My duffel bag hung heavy on my shoulder, but I didn't mind. I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The resentment, the hurt, all that mess with Marissa and Doreen, it was still there. Sure, but it was quieter now, muffled by the wind whipping across the runway. I adjusted my coat and headed toward the lodge shuttle, my boots crunching on the thin layer of snow already dusting the ground. The shuttle driver, a guy named Wes, gave me a nod as I climbed in. He was older, maybe 50, with a scruffy beard and a voice that sounded like he'd smoked one too many cigarettes. "First time in Jackson?" he asked, glancing at me in the rearview mirror as he pulled away from the airport. "Yeah," I said, settling into the seat. "Needed a change." He chuckled, low and easy. "You picked a good spot for it. Nothing like these mountains to clear your head." I didn't say much after that, just watched out the window as the town slid by little shops with wooden signs, snow piled up on the curbs, peaks rising higher the further we went. Wes kept talking, pointing out landmarks, telling me about some bar with the best chili in town. I nodded along, half listening, but mostly I was soaking it in, the quiet, the space, the fact that no one here knew me or cared why I'd come. The shuttle wound up a narrow road, trees closing in on both sides, and then there it was, my cabin. It sat alone, tucked against a hill, all dark wood and big windows glowing soft in the fading light. Wes dropped me off with a wave. "Enjoy the solitude, man. Holler if you need a ride back." I thanked him and hauled my bag up the steps, the cold biting at my fingertips as I fumbled with the key. The door swung open, and I stopped dead. A fire was already crackling in the stone fireplace, the heat washing over me like a welcome. Flannel blankets were draped over a big leather couch, and those floor-to-ceiling windows showed nothing but snow and trees stretching out forever. Outside, a hot tub steamed under a little overhang, the water bubbling quietly. It was perfect, better than I'd pictured when I'd booked it in that angry haze back home. I dropped my bag by the door and walked to the windows, pressing my hand against the cold glass. The silence was thick, broken only by the pop of the fire, and it felt like a reset button had been hit. No buzzing phone, no voices telling me what I should feel, just me and this place. I pulled out my phone, snapped a quick selfie with the fire glowing behind me, and posted it. No balloons, no drama, just silence. I didn't check the likes right away, just tossed the phone onto the couch and grabbed a beer from the little fridge the lodge had stocked. The first sip was cold, sharp, and I sank into the couch, letting the warmth from the fire seep into my bones. This was what I'd needed, what I'd been chasing when I'd clicked that confirm button. Not just a trip, but clarity, something to remind me I didn't have to beg for a place in anyone's life. The cabin smelled like pine and smoke, and I closed my eyes for a minute, listening to the wind outside. I could have stayed home, could have fought harder to be at that party, but what would that have gotten me? A seat at the edge of the table? A forced smile while Doreen made her little jabs? No, this was better. I opened my eyes and looked around again, the wooden beams overhead, the thick rug under my feet, the way the firelight danced on the walls. It wasn't just a hideout, it was mine, something I'd chosen when they'd left me no choice at all. I finished the beer, set the bottle down, and stood up to unpack. Not much, just the sweaters and socks I'd thrown in, the gloves I'd bought last minute, but it felt good to settle in, to make this space real. I stepped outside to check the hot tub, the cold slapping me awake again. The steam rose in thick clouds, and I dipped my hand in. Hot, almost too hot, perfect for later. The sky was darkening, stars starting to poke through, and I stood there, hands in my pockets, letting it sink in. Back home, they'd be setting up for Eli's party tomorrow, streamers, cake, all that noise, and I wouldn't be there. Part of me ached at that, a quick, sharp pang when I thought of Eli's face, but I shoved it down. This wasn't about him, it was about them, about how they decided I didn't fit. I went back inside, the warmth wrapping around me again, and grabbed another beer. The phone was lighting up now, likes, comments, probably some messages, but I ignored it. I didn't need validation from anyone back there. What I needed was this: the crackle of the fire, the cold glass in my hand, the quiet that let me hear my own thoughts for once. I sat back down, stretching my legs out, and let my mind wander. Tomorrow, I'd hit the slopes, something I hadn't done since I was a kid. I'd booked a lesson, figured I'd start slow, but the idea of it, the speed, the cold air rushing past, made my pulse kick up a little. It was something new, something for me, not tied to anyone else's plans or rules. I took another sip, the beer settling me, and glanced at the fire. The log shifted, sending up a spray of sparks, and I felt a small, real smile tug at my mouth. This wasn't just escape, it was freedom. They could have their party, their maternal side of it. I had this, and it was already more than they could have given me. The night stretched out ahead, quiet and mine, and I leaned back, ready to let it unfold. I woke up to sunlight streaming through those big cabin windows, the kind of bright that bounces off snow and makes everything look sharper. The fire had burned down to embers overnight, but the room was still warm, cozy in a way I hadn't felt in forever. I stretched, my back popping from the couch where I'd crashed, and for a second, I just lay there, listening to the quiet. No phone buzzing, no voices, just the soft whistle of wind outside. It was Saturday, Eli's birthday, and back home, they'd be blowing up balloons, setting out snacks, getting ready to sing without me. The thought stung, but I shook it off. I'd made my choice, and I was here now in Jackson Hole, with a day ahead that was all mine. I got up, made coffee in the little kitchen, and stood by the window, mug in hand, watching the mountains glow under the morning sun. This was my therapy, and it was already working. I'd booked a ski lesson for today, something to keep me moving, to keep my head from spinning back to what I was missing. I pulled on my gear, thermal socks, the new gloves, a jacket I hadn't worn in years, and grabbed the ski pass from the counter. The lodge shuttle picked me up right on time, Wes behind the wheel again, grinning like he'd been waiting to see me. "Skiing today? Huh? Good call," he said, pulling onto the road. "Powder's fresh, best day for it." I nodded, managing a small smile. "First time in a while. Hope I don't need it too bad." He laughed, a rough, friendly sound. "You'll be fine. They've got good folks up there to show you the ropes." The ride was quick, the hills rolling by, and I felt a flicker of excitement, something I hadn't expected. This was new, and I needed new. At the ski rental shop, I met Lane, my instructor. She was maybe 30, with short hair tucked under a beanie and a grin that said she'd seen her share of shaky first-timers. "Callum, right? Ready to hit the snow?" she asked, handing me a pair of skis. "Yeah," I said, taking them, the weight solid in my hands. "Let's see if I remember how this works." She walked me through the basics: how to clip in, how to shift my weight, how to stop without plowing into a tree. Her voice was calm, steady, with a little edge of humor that made it easy to listen. We started on a gentle slope, just a practice run, and I wobbled at first, my legs feeling like they belonged to someone else. But then I got it, the rhythm, the lean, and I made it down without falling. Lane clapped, grinning. "Not bad, Cal. You're a natural." I laughed, breathless, the cold air burning my lungs. Tell that to my knees. The next run was steeper, faster, and I felt it. The rush, the way the wind cut past me, the snow crunching under my skis. My mind went blank, no room for anything but the slope and the next turn. It was exactly what I'd needed, this clean wipe of everything back home. Lane kept me going, pushing me a little harder each time, and by the end, I was grinning like a kid, sweat soaking my shirt under the jacket. "You're hooked now," she said, unclipping her skis. "Tomorrow, we'll try something bigger." I nodded, still catching my breath. "Deal." The mountains stretched out around us, wide and endless, and I felt steady for the first time in days. Back at the cabin, I peeled off my gear and headed straight for the hot tub. The water was scalding, steam rising into the cold air, and I sank in with a groan, a bourbon in hand from the bottle I'd found in the cabinet. The heat melted into my muscles, and I leaned my head back, staring up at the sky turning pink and orange. It was peaceful, perfect, and then my phone buzzed on the ledge where I'd left it. I almost ignored it, but I glanced over messages, piling up again. "Trent, my brother-in-law, why are you being so dramatic?" "Doreen, of course, you abandoned your own son." I stared at them, the bourbon glass cold against my palm, and felt a laugh bubble up, short, hard, empty. They were still at it, still trying to drag me back into their mess. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my camera, snapped a shot of the mountain glowing in the sunset, and posted it. Sometimes, peace is the best gift you can give yourself. Then I tossed the phone aside, letting it clatter on the wood. The water bubbled around me, and I took a slow sip of the bourbon, the burn matching the heat on my skin. Back home, they'd be cutting cake right about now, singing to Eli while he clapped his little hands. I pictured it for a second, his face lit up, Marissa smiling, Doreen fussing over everything, and it hurt, but not as much as I'd thought it would. I wasn't there, and yeah, that sucked. But this was mine. The mountains, the snow, the quiet, they didn't get to take that away. I closed my eyes, letting the steam wrap around me, and thought about the day. Skiing with Lane, feeling my body figure it out, the way the world shrank down to just me and the slope. It was simple, clean, and I hadn't realized how much I'd needed that until now. The sky darkened, stars popping out one by one, and I stayed there, soaking, sipping, letting the cold air mix with the heat. My phone buzzed again, but I didn't look. Whatever they had to say, it could wait forever if I wanted. I wasn't their punching bag anymore, not their fallback guy to blame when things went sideways. I finished the bourbon, set the glass down, and sank lower in the water, the jets rumbling against my back. Tomorrow, I'd ski again, maybe grab a beer at that bar Wes had mentioned. For now, though, this was enough: the hot tub, the mountains, the silence. I'd left their party behind, and out here, I was finding something better. Peace wasn't just a word. It was this, right here, and I wasn't letting it go. I woke up Sunday morning to the smell of coffee brewing in the cabin's little machine, the kind of slow drip that fills the air with something steady and warm. The hot tub had knocked me out last night, and I'd slept hard, no dreams, just a deep, blank rest I hadn't had in weeks. I rolled off the couch, my muscles stiff from skiing but loose from the soak, and grabbed my phone off the counter where I'd left it. The screen was lit up with notifications, but one stood out, a voicemail from Amira, my cousin, the only one in the family who ever got me. Her name made me pause, a little spark of curiosity cutting through the haze. I poured a mug of coffee, the steam curling up, and hit play, leaning against the counter as her voice crackled through. "Call me. You are not going to believe what happened." That was it, short, sharp, with a laugh behind it. I grinned despite myself. Amira always had a way of pulling me out of my own head. I took a sip of the coffee, strong and black, and dialed her back. She picked up on the first ring, like she'd been waiting. "Cal, oh my God, where do I even start?" she said, her voice buzzing with energy. "The party yesterday, it was a train wreck. You dodged a bullet, trust me." I set the mug down and walked to the window, the mountains stretching out white and calm under the morning sun. "What happened?" I asked, keeping it casual, but my pulse kicked up a little. I wasn't sure I wanted to know, but I could not ask. Amira didn't hold back, she never did. "Okay, so it starts fine, right? Balloons, cake, Eli's all cute in his little hat. Then Doreen gets up to make this toast, and get this, she says something about men who couldn't make it, all smug like she's scoring points. Marissa rolls her eyes, but you can tell she's pissed. I snorted, picturing it, Doreen with her wine glass, that fake smile she wears like a mask. "Sounds about right," I said, and Amira laughed. "Oh, it gets better. So Derek shows up, you know, your buddy from work? He's invited, which is already weird since he's not family, and he brings his new girlfriend. Guess who? Marissa's old roommate, Tara, the one she hates." I froze, coffee halfway to my mouth. "No way." "Yes way," Amira said, glee in her voice. Marissa's face, Cal, I wish you'd seen it. She goes white, then red, and Kylie's over there losing it, yelling at Derek like he planned it. Meanwhile, Doreen's trying to play peacemaker, but she snaps at some random and instead, and Eli, he's overstimulated, screaming his head off. I laughed, a real one this time, sharp and loud in the quiet cabin. "Keep going," I said, leaning into the story now. Amira was on a roll. So someone, nobody's owning up, knocks over the cake trying to calm Eli down. It's this big, fancy thing, chocolate and frosting everywhere, and Marissa just screams. Like horror movie screams. People start leaving, grabbing their coats, and the whole thing's over before the sun's even down. It was chaos, Cal. Absolute chaos. I took a slow sip of coffee, letting it sink in, the warmth spreading through me as I stared out at the snow. "Yes, I picked the right weekend to disappear," I said, and Amira cackled. "You have no idea. They're all blaming each other now. Doreen's mad at Marissa, Kylie's mad at Derek, and somehow you're the bad guy for not being there to fix it." I shook my head. setting the mug down on the windowsill. The fire was still smoldering from last night, and I tossed a log on, watching the flames catch. They can't pin this on me, I said, more to myself than her. Oh, they're trying, Amira said. Marissa's been whining to anyone who'll listen, and Doreen's acting like you cursed the whole day by leaving. It's ridiculous. I grinned, poking at the fire with the iron rod. Let them spin it however they want. I'm not there to hear it. Amira's voice softened a little. Good for you, Cal. Seriously. This trip, it's the smartest thing you've done in a while. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Yeah, it is. We hung up after that, and I stood there by the fire, the heat licking at my hands. The cabin was quiet again, just the crackle of the logs and the faint hum of the wind outside. I pictured the party falling apart, Doreen's toast, Derek and Tara walking in, the cake hitting the floor, and it felt like a movie I'd walked out of halfway through. I didn't need to see the ending. I already knew it was a mess. And here I was, miles away, with coffee in my hand and mountains out my window. I didn't feel guilty, not like they wanted me to. I felt satisfied, like I'd bet on myself and won. I grabbed my phone again, scrolling through the messages I'd ignored last night. Trent, Doreen, Kylie, all the same noise, trying to drag me back into their drama. I didn't answer. What was there to say? They'd made their party, and it had blown up in their faces. I wasn't the one who'd knocked over the cake or started the yelling. I took my coffee back to the couch and sat down, stretching my legs out. The sun was climbing higher now, turning the snow outside into a sheet of white fire. I thought about Eli for a second, his little hat, his cries, and it tugged at me, but not enough to pull me under. I'd see him soon, away from all that mess, just me and him. The fire popped, sending a spark up the chimney, and I leaned back, letting the warmth settle over me. Amira's call had been a gift, a front row seat to their collapse without having to sit through it. I didn't need to gloat. I just needed this quiet distance, a space where their voices couldn't reach. I finished the coffee, the mug empty now, and set it aside. Outside, the day was waiting, maybe another run on the slopes, maybe just a walk through the snow. Whatever it was, it'd be mine, not theirs. They could keep their imploded party. I had this, and it was better than anything they could have ruined. I sat by the fire that afternoon, the cabin glowing soft with the light bouncing off the snow outside, when my phone started buzzing again. The logs crackled, spitting little sparks, and I almost didn't check it. I was getting good at ignoring the noise. But the screen kept lighting up, one message after another, and I gave in, grabbing it off the couch with a sigh. Marissa's name popped up first. This wouldn't have happened if you'd just come. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the words, and felt a sharp, bitter laugh rise in my throat. Typical, everything goes to hell, and somehow it's my fault for not being there to mop it up. Next was Doreen. You left us to deal with this mess. That one made my jaw clench, the nerve of her acting like I'd abandoned some sacred duty. Then Kylie, you made Eli's first birthday about you. That hit harder, a cheap shot, and for a second, I pictured Eli's face, his little hands clapping, but I shook it off. They were grasping, flailing, trying to pin their disaster on me. I set the phone down hard, the clack loud against the wood of the coffee table, and leaned back, rubbing my face. They excluded me, shut me out of my own son's birthday like I was some stranger, and now they wanted me to feel bad because it fell apart. I laughed again, short, joyless, the sound swallowed by the cabin's quiet. They didn't get it, and they never would. I wasn't the one who'd turned Eli's day into a circus. That was on them, on Doreen's snide toast and Marissa's grudges and whoever'd smashed the cake. I grabbed my coffee mug from earlier, still half full and cold now, and took a sip anyway, the bitterness matching my mood. The fire popped, and I stared into it, letting the heat sink in while their words rattled around in my head. My phone buzzed again, and I almost chucked it across the room, but it was Amira this time. I opened it quick, expecting more gossip, and she didn't disappoint. Doreen just told Grandma you cursed the party. She said it's bad blood. Grandma's not buying it, though. I grinned, a real one this time, picturing Grandma Ruth, tiny, fierce, with a tongue that could cut glass. If anyone could see through Doreen's nonsense, it was her. I could hear her now, rolling her eyes, telling them all to stop whining. Bad blood, I muttered to myself, shaking my head. More like bad planning and worse attitudes. I didn't text Amira back yet, just set the phone down and stood up, stretching my legs. The cabin felt too still all of a sudden, like I needed to move, to shake off the weight they were still trying to dump on me. I grabbed my coat and stepped outside, the cold hitting me like a slap, crisp and clean. The snow crunched under my boots as I walked toward the trees, no real plan, just needing the air. The mountains loomed ahead, steady and silent, and I stopped, hands in my pockets, breathing deep. Back home, they were probably still spinning their blame game. Marissa crying to her friends, Doreen lecturing anyone who'd listen, Kylie sulking like a kid. And here I was, the scapegoat, the one they'd decided to pile it all on. It'd be funny if it wasn't so pathetic. I kicked at the snow, sending a little puff into the air, and thought about how predictable they were. Exclude me, then act shocked when I didn't stick around to take their crap. The wind picked up, rustling the pines, and I turned back toward the cabin, my breath fogging in front of me. Inside, the fire was still going strong, and I tossed another log on, watching the flames flare up. My phone was where I'd left it, glowing with their messages, and I made a decision. I was done with it. I opened each one, Marissa's, Doreen's, Kylie's, and HitBlock, one by one. The screen went quiet, and it felt like cutting a rope I'd been tangled in. Amira's number stayed. She was the only one worth keeping. But the rest? Gone. They could yell into the void all they wanted. I wasn't listening anymore. I tossed the phone onto the couch and grabbed a beer from the fridge, the cold glass sharp against my hand. I sank back into the cushions, the fire warming my feet, and took a long sip. Blocking them wasn't just about shutting them out. It was about taking back what they'd tried to steal. They didn't get to dictate how I felt. Not about Eli. Not about myself. I pictured Grandma Ruth again, probably sitting in her old chair with that look she gets, telling Doreen to quit her dramatics. Bad blood, I said out loud, smirking. If anything, the bad blood was theirs, spilling it all over each other while I was out here, free of it. The beer went down easy, and I let my head tip back, the cabin's quiet wrapping around me like a blanket. Outside, the sky was turning gray, clouds rolling in over the peaks, but it didn't bother me. Let it snow, let it storm. I wasn't going anywhere. This trip wasn't just a break. It was a line in the sand. They'd made me the bad guy, fine. I'd play that part, but on my terms, not theirs. I finished the beer, set the bottle down, and grabbed the flannel blanket off the armrest, pulling it over my legs. The firelight danced on the walls, and I felt something settle in me, anger still, sure, but quieter now, mixed with something stronger. They could spiral all they wanted. I was done spinning with them. Amira's text about Grandma stuck with me, a little lifeline to the family that still made sense, and I held on to it. The rest? They were on their own. I closed my eyes, the warmth sinking in, and let the day fade out, their voices lost in the crackle of the fire. I woke up Monday morning with the cabin still dark, the kind of quiet that only comes with snow muffling the world outside. The fire was just embers now, a faint glow in the hearth, and I lay there on the couch, staring at the ceiling beams. My phone was silent. No buzzing, no notifications, thanks to the blocks I'd put up yesterday. It felt good, like I'd finally turned off a radio that had been blaring static for too long. I didn't know what Marissa or Doreen or Kylie were saying now, and I didn't care. I'd given myself this, Jackson Hole, the mountains, the space, and I wasn't letting them claw it back. I sat up, rubbed the sleep from my eyes, and decided right then, I wasn't ready to go home. 5 more days. That's what I'd give myself. I grabbed my phone, opened the travel app, and extended the trip, cabin, ski pass, shuttle, all of it. Done. The coffee machine gurgled as I set it going, and I stepped outside to feel the air. It was cold, sharp enough to sting my face, and the snow had piled up overnight, a fresh layer blanketing the porch. The mountains stood tall against a pale sky, and I breathed it in, letting it fill me up. Back inside, the coffee was ready, and I poured a mug, the heat seeping into my hands as I leaned against the counter. Today was mine. No plans yet, just possibilities. I'd booked a backcountry ski tour with Lane later, something she'd mentioned during our lesson, and I was already looking forward to it, the quiet of the trails, the burn in my legs. But first, I wanted to soak this in, this feeling of being untethered. The ski tour started mid-morning, and Lane met me at the lodge, her grin as easy as ever. "Ready for the real stuff?" she asked, tossing me a pair of poles. "Let's see if you can keep up." I laughed, clipping into my skis. No promises. We headed out, away from the main slopes, the snow crunching under us as the trees closed in. It was different out here, wilder, quieter, just the sound of our breathing and the swish of skis. Lane led the way, pointing out tracks in the snow, deer, maybe a fox, and I followed, my body settling into the rhythm. The air was cold, my lungs burning, but it felt good, like I was shedding something with every push forward. We stopped at a clearing, the mountains rising sharp around us, and I caught my breath, the world so still it almost hummed. Back at the lodge that evening, I stumbled into a whiskey tasting in the bar, a little setup with wooden tables and a guy pouring samples from bottles I'd never heard of. I joined in, sliding onto a bench next to a couple from Vermont, Mel and Jonas. They were older, maybe 60, with quick laughs and stories about skiing here every winter. "What brings you out here solo?" Mel asked, her eyes crinkling as she sipped her drink. I took a swallow of the whiskey, smooth, smoky, and shrugged. "Missed a birthday party. Best decision I've ever made." Jonas chuckled, raising his glass. "To that, then. Family can wait." We clinked, and the warmth spread through me, not just from the drink, but from the ease of it. No judgment, just company. We swapped stories, mine about the slopes, theirs about a moose they'd seen last year, and the night blurred into laughter and refills. Later, back in the cabin, I stoked the fire and grabbed my phone, the whiskey still buzzing in my head. I snapped a shot of the fireplace, the flames licking up, and posted it. I don't fix family messes anymore. That job's been outsourced to karma. I tossed the phone aside and sank into the couch, the blanket pulled over my legs. The silence from my blocked numbers was golden. No texts, no guilt trips, just the crackle of the fire and the faint howl of wind outside. I thought about Mel and Jonas, how simple it had been to sit with them, no history dragging us down. That's what I wanted now, moments that didn't come with strings. The firelight danced on the walls, and I let my mind drift. Back home, they were probably still reeling from the party, Marissa licking her wounds, Doreen spinning her tales. I didn't need to know the details. Amira would fill me in if it was worth it. For now, I had this. The cabin, the snow, the day I'd carved out for myself. I pictured laying out on the trail, her easy confidence, and the way Mel had patted my arm like I was an old friend. It wasn't just escape anymore. It was something I was building, piece by piece. The whiskey lingered on my tongue, and I closed my eyes, the warmth sinking deep. 5 more days stretched ahead, and I could feel them, open, clean, mine. I got up, grabbed a glass of water to cut through the buzz, and stood by the window. The snow was falling again, soft and steady, burying the world outside. I didn't feel trapped, though. I felt free. No contact, no apologies, just me and this place. I thought about that post, the one about karma, and smirked. Let them figure it out. I wasn't their cleanup crew anymore. I finished the water, set the glass down, and headed back to the couch, the fire still going strong. Tomorrow, I'd ski again, maybe hit that bar Wes had mentioned. For now, I pulled the blanket tighter and let the quiet take over. This was what I'd come for: clear skies, clear head, no one else's mess to carry. The night settled around me, and I leaned into it, ready for whatever came next, as long as it was mine. I woke up Tuesday to the sound of snow tapping the cabin windows, a soft, steady rhythm that pulled me out of sleep. The fire was out, just a pile of ash now, and the room was cool, but I didn't mind. I lay there for a minute, staring at the wooden ceiling, feeling the quiet wrap around me like a second blanket. My phone was still on the couch where I'd tossed it last night, and I didn't reach for it, not yet. The whiskey tasting with Mel and Jonas lingered in my head, their easy laughter, the way they'd toasted my escape without prying. It had been a good night, simple and light, and I wanted to hold on to that. I got up, stretched my stiff legs, and started the coffee, the familiar gurgle filling the silence as I looked out at the snow piling up. It was a new day, and I wasn't letting anyone back home pull me out of it. The coffee was hot, burning my tongue a little as I took the first sip, and I decided to call Amira while it cooled. She picked up quick, her voice bright despite the early hour. "Cal, you still alive out there?" I grinned, leaning against the counter. "Barely. Too much whiskey last night." She laughed, loud and sharp. "Good. You deserve it. Things here, though, they're a mess." I took another sip, bracing myself. "What now?" She didn't hesitate. "Marissa's been crying to everyone. Her friends, Trent, even the mailman probably. Says the party was a disaster because you weren't there to keep things steady. Doreen's blaming Marissa for not controlling Derek and Tara. Kylie blocked half the family after some big fight with Trent, and he started this group chat to fix everything. It's a circus." I shook my head, smirking into my muck. "Sounds like they're doing fine without me." "Oh, it gets better," Amira said, her tone gleeful. "Grandma Ruth told them all to grow up, called Doreen a meddling hen to her face. She's the only one keeping it real." I laughed, picturing Grandma's glare, that no-nonsense way she cuts through the noise. "Wish I'd seen that," I said, and Amira snorted. "You should've. Anyway, Marissa sent you an email. Figured you blocked her texts. Said she needs to talk when you're back. I froze, the mug halfway to my mouth. An email. Of course she'd find a way around. She can wait, I said, keeping my voice flat. I'm not rushing back to play therapist. Amira's voice softened. Good. Stay out there, Cal. They'll figure it out, or they won't. Not your problem. We hung up, and I set the phone down, staring at it for a second. An email. I didn't open it, didn't even look for it. Whatever Marissa wanted, it could sit there, unread, until I was ready. If I ever was. I finished my coffee and grabbed my ski gear, the routine settling me. The snow was still falling outside, light and steady, and I headed for the slopes, the shuttle picking me up with Wes at the wheel again. Back at it? He asked, grinning. Can't stop now, I said, and he nodded like he got it. Lane was waiting at the lodge, and we hit a steeper run this time, my legs burning as I carved through the powder. I went faster, freer, the wind whipping past, and it felt like I was leaving more than just tracks in the snow. After the run, I stopped at the lodge gift shop, my breath still fogging in the cold. I wandered the aisles, not looking for much, until I saw it, a small sketchbook, leather-bound, with a pencil tucked in the spine. It caught my eye, and I grabbed it, an idea sparking. Back at the cabin, I stoked the fire and sat down, the book open on my lap. I wasn't an artist, not really, but I started sketching anyway, a rough outline of the mountains I'd seen today, jagged peaks under a wide sky. Then, below it, I added the date I'd left, the day I'd boarded that plane. My liberation day. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and I liked how it looked, simple, solid, a mark of something I'd claimed. I thought about turning it into a tattoo, something permanent to carry with me. The idea stuck, growing as I flipped the pencil between my fingers. I'd always wanted ink, something small but real, and this felt right, a mountain range, that date, a reminder of when I'd stopped letting them define me. I sketched it again, cleaner this time, and leaned back, the fire warming my legs. Amira's words echoed, Marissa crying, Doreen pointing fingers, Kylie sulking, and I let them drift away, smoke up the chimney. They were spiraling, just like she'd said, and I wasn't jumping in to stop it. Not anymore. The snow kept falling outside, burying the porch, and I got up to grab a beer, the cold bottle a contrast to the heat in the room. I didn't check my email, didn't even glance at my phone. Marissa's "we need to talk" could wait forever if I wanted. I sat back down, the sketchbook still open, and took a sip, the firelight flickering over the page. I pictured her typing that message, maybe pacing her kitchen, thinking I'd come running. She was wrong. I was here, sketching mountains, skiing slopes, letting their mess spin out without me. The beer went down easy, and I added a few more lines to the drawing's sharp edges, a little shadow. It was rough, but it was enough. I leaned back, the blanket pulled over my knees, and watched the flames. Tomorrow, I'd ski again, maybe ask Lane about that bar Wes kept mentioning. For now, this was it. The cabin, the snow, the sketch in my hands. They could spiral all they wanted. I was done circling with them. The fire popped, and I smiled, small but real. This trip wasn't just a break, it was a beginning, and I was holding on to it, one line at a time. The night stretched out, quiet and mine, and I let it settle, the weight of their chaos left far behind. I woke up Monday morning, the last day of my extended trip, to a sky so blue it looked like it had been painted on. The snow had stopped overnight, leaving everything outside the cabin crisp and bright, the kind of morning that makes you want to stand still and take it in. I rolled off the couch, my back creaking from too many nights there, and started the coffee, the familiar smell filling the air as I shuffled to the window. The mountains glowed under the sunrise, soft pinks and oranges spilling over the trees, and I stood there, mug in hand, watching it unfold. This was it, my last day in Jackson Hole, and I didn't feel that pull to go back, not yet. I'd found something here, something I wasn't ready to let go of, and I wanted to hold it tight before the real world came crashing in. I took my coffee outside, stepping onto the porch in my boots and coat, the cold biting at my face as I leaned against the railing. The air was sharp, clean, and I sipped slow, letting the warmth fight the chill. Back home, Marissa's email was probably still sitting there, unread, and the thought of it didn't twist me up like it might have a week ago. Doreen's blame, Kylie's whining, all their noise, it was distant now, like a radio station I'd tuned out. I pictured Eli for a second, his little grin, and that ached, but it wasn't enough to drag me under. I'd see him soon, on my terms, not theirs. For now, this sunrise, this quiet, it was mine, and I wasn't trading it for anything. I went back inside, the fire still dead from last night, and decided to skip it. No point building one just to leave it burning. Instead, I grabbed my phone and snapped a picture of the sunrise through the window, the light catching on the snow like sparks. I posted it, my fingers moving fast. Turns out I didn't miss much. I gained everything. I didn't check the likes, didn't wait for replies, just tossed the phone onto the couch and finished my coffee standing up. The words felt true, solid, and I didn't need anyone's approval to back them up. I'd come here raw, cut open by that text from Marissa, and now I was leaving with something better, peace, clarity, a line I'd drawn for myself. I packed slow, folding my sweaters, stuffing the socks into the duffel, the sketchbook tucked in last. That mountain drawing, the date below it, it was rough, but it meant something, and I wasn't letting it get lost in the shuffle. The cabin felt smaller now, like it was ready to let me go, and I took one last look around, the big windows, the leather couch, the hearth where I'd burned through their drama night after night. It had been good to me, this place, and I zipped the bag shut with a nod, like I was thanking it. The shuttle was coming soon, west behind the wheel one last time, and I'd be on a plane by afternoon. But I wasn't done with the day yet. I wanted one more piece of it. I headed to the slopes, the snow crunching under my boots, and rented skis for a quick run. Lane wasn't around, but I didn't need her. I'd figured it out enough to go solo. The lift carried me up, the cold wind whipping past, and I looked out over the valley, the trees dusted white, the peaks standing tall. At the top, I pushed off, fast and free, my legs steady now, the rhythm second nature. The snow flew around me, the world blurring into white and blue, and I laughed, loud, real, the sound swallowed by the mountain. It was over too quick, but it was enough, a last taste of what I'd found here. I unclipped at the bottom, my breath fogging, and handed the skis back, my chest light. Back at the cabin, I grabbed my bag and waited for Wes, the sun climbing higher now. He pulled up right on time, grinning through the window. "Leaving already?" he asked as I climbed in. "Yeah," I said, tossing the duffel in the back. "Gotta get back eventually." He nodded, pulling onto the road. "You look different, man. Lighter." I shrugged, managing a small smile. "Feels that way." He didn't push, just drove, the hills sliding by as we headed for the airport. I watched them go, the snow, the pines, and felt a pang, not regret, but something close to gratitude. This place had given me more than I'd expected, and I wasn't forgetting it. At the airport, I checked in, the ticket in my hand a quiet end to it all. The flight was smooth, the mountains shrinking below me, and I leaned back, the sketchbook in my lap. I didn't open it, just held it, the weight a reminder. Back home, I'd land in the mess, Marissa's email, whatever fallout was waiting, but I wasn't the same guy who'd left. I'd set a boundary here, one they couldn't cross, and I'd stick to it. No more showing up where I wasn't wanted, no more swallowing their shame. The plane hummed, and I closed my eyes. The sunrise still burned into my head. When I got home, the house was dark, quiet, just like I'd left it. I dropped the bag by the door and stood there, the Lego tower still on the coffee table. It hit me, Eli, the birthday I'd missed, but I didn't let it pull me down. I'd see him soon, just us, no circus. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, cracked it open, and stepped outside, the night cool and still. The stars were out, not as bright as Wyoming's, but enough. I raised the bottle to the sky, a small salute to the horizon I'd left behind, and whispered, "Here's to peace." The first sip was cold, sharp, and I grinned, zero regret, all gain. Whatever came next, I'd handle it my way, and they'd have to figure out how to live with that.